you look like a man. But deep down, are you just a child with a beard? Most people will never tell you this because they don't want to offend you. But that's exactly why you're still stuck, because if you keep avoiding responsibility in the name of freedom, if you chase pleasure but sabotage purpose, if you run from structure while craving meaning, then you're not evolving, you're hiding. And today we're going to rip the mask off the man-child. Jung warned us about this, and once you see it, you won't unsee it. Have you ever met someone who, even in their 30s, still lives like a rebellious teenager? Jung called this the puer aeternus, the eternal boy. It's not just about appearances or hobbies. It's about a deep refusal to grow emotionally. Time passes on the outside, but inside they remain stuck in an idealized youth, and that emotional immaturity always demands a price. The man-child lives what Jung called a provisional life, always waiting for the real beginning just around the corner, the perfect job, the dream partner, the ultimate purpose that will suddenly awaken their greatness. But that moment never comes. Procrastination is masked as freedom, and lack of structure as some kind of spiritual rebellion. For Jung, the puer wasn't just a personality trait. It's an archetype, a psychic energy that symbolizes the desire for transcendence, for limitless freedom, for escaping the gravity of real life. But where there is light, there is also shadow. The same impulse that inspires can also destroy if it's not balanced by the synex, the wise old man who brings discipline. This archetype appears in ancient mythology. Dionysus, the god of ecstasy and chaos, or eros, the eternal youth who seduces and disappears. These are more than just stories. They are psychic maps. The modern man-child is a living echo of these gods. He seeks pleasure, intensity, and emotional highs, but runs from pain, patience, and commitment. The puer sees routine as prison. Stability feels like death. Commitment is viewed as a trap. But this rebellion is a mask. Without roots, even freedom rots. What once felt like lightness turns into confusion. The more he escapes, the more lost he becomes. He falls in love easily, but can't hold the weight of love. He starts projects with passion, but rarely finishes them. He lives in the world of ideas, of fantasies, of potential, where everything is promising and nothing is real. His resistance to maturity is really a resistance to facing himself. Why are so many modern men trapped in this archetype? Society glorifies youth, speed, and detachment. A sheltered childhood or early trauma can lock a person into emotional immaturity. And our culture rewards escapism. We celebrate freedom without form, but freedom without form is chaos. The puer fears time itself, because time brings loss, responsibility, limitation. So he tries to freeze the clock with parties, obsessions, and endless restarts, but time keeps ticking, and inside he begins to collapse. Emptiness starts to replace excitement. Jung saw the path of individuation as the antidote, becoming your true self by integrating the opposites within. The puer must meet the synex. Youth must sit with wisdom. That's the only way real freedom is born. Not in escape, but in presence. And this is where most people run. Because integration takes strength. It means facing your shadow, letting go of control, carrying the weight of life. But this is where the real journey begins. He looks like a grown man. Maybe he has a job, a car, even a beard. But behind the mask of adulthood, there's a boy who never crossed the bridge to emotional maturity. This is the man-child, the physical shell of a man carrying the emotional wiring of a teenager, and his behaviors betray him every time he's asked to face reality. One of the most striking traits is the avoidance of responsibility. He fears commitment, like others fear death. Long-term relationships, stable careers, personal accountability, these feel like cages to him. Instead, he floats between situations, blaming the world for never feeling ready. But readiness is built, not found. Another common sign, impulsive behavior. He seeks immediate gratification, often at the expense of his future, whether it's blowing money, chasing shallow validation, or sabotaging his own stability. He acts on emotion rather than strategy. Planning? That's boring. Sacrifice? That's oppression. Pleasure is his god, and now is his only timeline. He often maintains a deep emotional dependency, especially on maternal figures. He may still live with his mother or seek partners who take care of him. He wants nurturing without pressure, love without limits, safety without expectations. But this clinging isn't love, it's fear, disguised as affection. Many live in a fantasy world where dreams substitute for effort. They talk of big visions, writing novels, starting businesses, changing the world, but never take real steps. Why? Because real steps mean risk. They'd rather live in the idea of greatness than face the pain of becoming great. Fantasy is safer than failure. His relationships are turbulent. He might be magnetic, spontaneous, even addictive at first. But over time, the cracks appear. Jealousy, neediness, avoidance, emotional volatility. He can't regulate intimacy. He either clings or disappears. This pattern leaves destruction in its wake, in others and in himself. Often he has a deep fear of growing up, not just aging, but becoming someone others depend on. He resists being the rock because he doesn't feel solid inside. The very idea of someone counting on him triggers anxiety. He seeks to be adored, not trusted. Seen, not leaned on. There's also a rejection of structure. Routines, goals, responsibilities feel like enemies. He claims to value freedom, but what he really avoids is the confrontation with his own limits. Freedom without direction becomes chaos, and he is lost in it, without even realizing he's drowning. Many man-children were raised in sheltered environments where discomfort was removed and failure was softened. Or conversely, they suffered childhood trauma and built walls to survive. In both cases, the result is the same. They never learn to carry weight. So they stay light. Too light to build anything real. But here's the paradox. Beneath all this, avoidance is often a deeply gifted soul, creative, sensitive, passionate. The puer aeternus archetype carries immense potential, but potential means nothing without grounding. The boy must become a man, not by killing his youth, but by channeling it into something greater. No one is born a man-child. This psychological pattern is shaped, carved by experiences, relationships, and the culture we grow in. To understand the puer aeternus, we must go back to where the story begins. In childhood, a place where protection can turn into paralysis and trauma can freeze time inside the psyche. One major cause is a sheltered childhood. When parents shield their child from all discomfort, pain, or failure, they deny him the opportunity to build strength. Every challenge, avoided as a lesson, never learned. He grows physically, but emotionally he stays in the crib, waiting to be carried through life. On the flip side, early trauma can also forge the man-child. Neglect, emotional abuse, or chaotic parenting can shatter a child's sense of safety. In response, he escapes inward. He builds fantasies, creates inner worlds, and clings to the idea of a better, freer version of life, one where he's untouched by pain. Sometimes the mother complex plays a key role. Overprotective, controlling, or emotionally fused mothers may anchor their sons in prolonged dependence. Without a healthy separation, the boy never fully becomes a man. He remains psychically tied to the womb. Jung saw this dynamic often in therapy. Our modern culture amplifies the problem. Youth is idolized, freedom is fetishized, adulthood is mocked. We consume stories of rebels, dreamers, and wanderers, but rarely of those who build, endure, and lead. So the man-child looks around and sees his immaturity reflected back as something cool. Add to that the pursuit of freedom without responsibility. Many are taught that personal liberation means avoiding constraints, but Jung warned that real freedom only comes through structure. Otherwise, we are prisoners of our impulses. The puer rejects this, and so he remains caged by what he refuses to confront. Educational systems often fail to teach emotional maturity. Boys are rarely taught how to sit with discomfort, process emotions, or build identity through effort. They learn to perform, compete, or numb themselves. Vulnerability becomes shameful. Responsibility becomes punishment. No wonder they resist growing up. Another layer is the rise of the fantasy economy. Video games, social media, digital escapes that offer dopamine without danger. Why risk rejection in real life when you can be a hero online? This breeds emotional avoidance and inflates the illusion of power without having to earn it. The longer the puer avoids real challenges, the more fragile he becomes. Every avoided hardship makes him softer. Every shortcut weakens his soul. He becomes allergic to friction, and friction is what shapes character. This emotional fragility becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, but the most tragic cause is, perhaps, the most silent, unmet potential. The boy who was never challenged, never hurt, never inspired, never had the chance to become. His life becomes a slow mourning for what he could have been. And that grief shows up as avoidance, anxiety, and longing. No one stays trapped in the puer aeternus forever, unless they choose to. Growth is possible, but it's not comfortable, and it's never accidental. Jung believed the path to individuation, becoming a whole human being, starts when we stop running and start confronting. Maturity isn't a destination, it's a battle. The first step is recognition. You must see the patterns for what they are. The avoidance, the fantasies, the dependency, not as quirks, but as defense mechanisms. You have to tell yourself the truth. I'm not really free, I'm just afraid. That kind of honesty breaks the illusion and begins the transformation. Then comes the hardest part, facing reality. That means making peace with limits. It means accepting that life demands effort, sacrifice, and consistency. Not every moment is exciting, not every path is painless. But this is the terrain where real character is formed, not in escape, but in endurance. Building autonomy is key. Stop waiting for someone to save you. Make decisions. Take responsibility. Pay your own bills. Keep your own promises. These are not glamorous acts, but they're sacred. Because every time you choose self-responsibility, you reclaim a piece of your soul. The puer must also integrate the senex, the archetype of structure, discipline, and wisdom. This doesn't mean killing your spontaneity, it means grounding it, turning passion into purpose, turning ideas into actions. The eternal boy must sit at the table with the wise elder inside him. This process requires structure and discipline, two things the man-child instinctively resists. Create routines, set boundaries, follow through. These acts may feel mechanical at first, but over time they awaken inner strength. Structure is not the enemy of freedom. It's its foundation. You'll need to reclaim pain as a teacher. The puer runs from discomfort, but pain refines the soul. Learn to sit with boredom, to wrestle with failure, to endure rejection. These are the fires that burn away illusion and forge resilience. You don't become whole by avoiding suffering. You become whole by transforming it. Shadow integration is another vital step. All the traits you've rejected, seriousness, patience, responsibility, must be faced, owned, and absorbed. Jung said the gold is in the shadow. The boy becomes a man when he stops fighting the parts of himself he once feared. The goal isn't to become rigid or joyless, it's to become balanced, to hold the energy of the puer and the senex in tension. Psychological maturation means you don't lose your fire, you aim it. You don't kill the dreamer, you teach him how to build. That's what creates real freedom, direction with depth. And finally, accept this truth. You will not be ready. maturity is not born from readiness. It's born from stepping forward anyway, facing life unarmed, unprepared, and choosing to grow in the chaos. That's when the puer begins to die, and a sovereign self begins to rise. There's a hidden price to staying young forever, and it's far more devastating than people think. On the surface, the puer aeternus seems free, spontaneous, full of potential. But deep down, he's haunted by the emptiness that comes from never becoming real. And that void expands with time. The man-child often feels like life is passing him by. Because it is. Friends build families. Others grow careers, grow roots, grow up. But he remains suspended in a limbo of potential, watching from the sidelines while pretending he's choosing freedom. That freedom becomes a grave. The cost isn't just external, it's deeply internal. He loses self-respect. Because part of us knows when we're lying to ourselves. When the voice inside says, "You're capable of more," and we ignore it, shame festers. And shame unhealed turns into relationships suffer too. Partners may initially be drawn to his charm, his fire, his lightness. But over time, they realize they're not with a partner, they're with a child, and no one wants to raise their lover. That realization slowly corrodes love, trust, and intimacy. Purpose becomes unreachable. The man-child may have a strong vision or calling, but he lacks the maturity to sacrifice for it. He sabotages long-term gains for short-term comfort. And in doing so, he watches his dreams dissolve, not because they were wrong, but because he refused to carry the weight they required. Eventually, he becomes trapped in repetition. Same habits, same stories, same failures. He blames luck, people, timing, anything but himself. But deep down, he knows the truth. And that truth begins to eat away at his soul because he sees time moving forward and he's still standing still. Even joy becomes dull. The highs that once excited him, parties, flings, fantasies, start to lose flavor. He chases harder, risks more, escapes faster, but it never feels the same. That's because the psyche is calling him to evolve, and evolution, ignored, becomes existential numbness. He might begin to isolate, to pretend he's choosing solitude when in fact he's avoiding mirrors, people who reflect his stagnation. And the longer he avoids those mirrors, the more his identity becomes fragile. He no longer knows who he is, only who he refuses to be. The body starts to speak too. Fatigue, anxiety, addiction, all become expressions of an unlived life. Jung believed the soul speaks through symptoms when ignored. The puer's refusal to mature doesn't just affect the mind, it carves itself into the flesh, until the body says what the mouth won't. The tragedy isn't that he stayed a boy, it's that he never allowed himself to become a man. Not the man society wants, but the man his soul is begging him to become. And unless he hears that call soon, he'll wake up in a life he no longer recognizes, and wonder when he stopped being real. To escape the prison of the puer, you don't just kill the boy. You must meet the inner father, not the literal father, but the internal figure of discipline, protection, and direction. This is the part of you that says, no more hiding. It's time to grow. The inner father is often missing in the man-child's psyche. Maybe he never had a strong role model, or maybe the father he had was abusive, absent, or cold. So he rejected that energy completely. But you can't reject discipline forever. You need structure to become sovereign. Integrating the father means accepting authority within yourself. No longer waiting for someone to guide you, rescue you, or validate you. You become your own anchor, your own firekeeper. You decide what's right. And you hold yourself accountable even when no one's watching. This isn't about being hard or emotionless. The true father archetype is also compassionate. He builds walls not to trap, but to protect. He holds space, but also holds standards. He doesn't shame the boy. He invites him to rise, and he stands with him through every fall. To find this energy, you must first go inward. Ask, what do I avoid? What do I refuse to take responsibility for? What would it look like to show up fully, even scared, even unsure? These questions activate the inner father. They shift the soul from avoidance to action. You'll feel resistance. The puer will scream, "But what if I lose my freedom?" And the father will calmly reply, "True freedom only comes when you own your life." That moment, when inner conflict meets inner clarity, is where transformation begins. Start small, wake up early, keep promises, finish what you start. These daily acts summon the inner father. You build trust with yourself, and trust is the foundation of identity. The man-child doesn't trust himself because he never tested himself. Now it's time. Mentorship helps too. Find real men, not macho postures, but men who walk with purpose. Observe how they carry pain, how they speak truth, how they hold boundaries. The inner father awakens through reflection. You become what you witness and what you honor. This journey is not linear. The puer will return. But every time he rises, the father must stand taller. Integration is not about perfection. It's about holding the tension between freedom and discipline, between fire and form, between innocence and strength. And when the inner father is finally alive, the man-child doesn't die. He matures. He brings his wonder, his passion, his dreams. But now, they have direction. And that's when life finally begins. So now, you know. This isn't just about emotional immaturity. It's about a soul trapped in an endless rehearsal for a life that never begins. Staying a boy may feel safe, but it costs you everything: your purpose, your relationships, your self-respect. And the longer you wait, the harder it becomes to recognize the man you were meant to become. Jung didn't say you had to become someone else. He said you had to integrate the parts you keep exiling: the shadow, the father, the structure, the fire. Maturity isn't a surrender of freedom. It's what makes freedom possible. So ask yourself, what are you still running from? What pain are you still avoiding? What would it look like to finally step into the life that's been waiting for you? This isn't about shame. It's about responsibility. You don't need to kill the boy inside. You need to raise him, and that begins with you. If this resonated with you, subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and keep walking with us. This isn't just a conversation. It's a transformation, and we're just getting started.